We've now reached the I in radical, which is concerned with integrated cross-organizational alignment. And the first topic that I want to bring up in this context is the notion of organization. There are few topics that are as severely and hard and discussed as strongly as how to organize people into teams, departments, and all kinds of other things. And all kinds of arguments are thrown around, ranging from span of control, optimal professional and personal development, and all kinds of other factors. And what I've noticed is that very often these kind of discussions around organization and reorganization are focused on the personal ambitions of the individuals that hope that they will gain as part of the organizational structure that is chosen. In my experience, it is often critical to have a very clear understanding of why are you working towards a certain organizational structure. And in this context, many moons ago, I worked on the BAPO model, BAPO model, where we basically say that the business and business strategy should drive architecture and technology choices. The architecture and technology choices should drive process, ways of working, and tooling. And once we are clear on that, then we can start to focus on the organizational structure in order to optimally support the B, the A, and the P. Of course, in practice, almost every organization is OPAP. We have an existing organization. That existing organization causes a set of processes and ways of working because some people are close and some people are far away. These processes then result in an accidental architecture. I mean, in the end, Conway's law, which states that the architecture is a reflection of the organization that built it, is still true. Yeah, so you have an accidental architecture, and that accidental architecture then results in a highly limited set of business strategy options. That said, you can use organizational change as a mechanism to drive change in the processes, ways of working, the architecture, but you should be very intentional about this. So you should be clear on what is the new business architecture and ways of working that you would like to have, or processes. Then you move your organization in that direction. And then by virtue of the new way of organizing, people will start to use the new ways of working and probably end up with a new architecture as well. Then the challenge becomes, what is one of the key factors when we talk about teams and organizing people into teams? And the key factor to consider here, in my view, is coordination cost. The issue that I see is that the larger the company that I work with, the more time people tend to spend in meetings. And why do they spend so much time in meetings? Because we need to coordinate and align and make sure that we are all contributing to a common goal for the company or the business unit that we're part of. And of course, the larger and more complex we are, the more meetings are required to ensure this alignment. But at the same time, no one likes meetings. Everyone understands that many meetings are basically a waste of time. And what we would really need to do is to figure out that ways in which we can achieve the alignment, but significantly reduce the amount of effort that is spent for the alignment. And two mechanisms that, in my view, are extremely helpful here are aligning through architecture instead of process. So that's the first thing. And the second one is to move inter-team coordination into intra-team coordination. So the first is architecture. If we have a situation where we have two teams that are working on two components in an architecture, and they can stay at their own side of the API so that this team can do its thing and that team can do its thing, and then they can basically work independent of each other as long as they do not violate the API that has been agreed between the two teams. Of course, there will always be architecture evolution and changes to the API, but by and large, coordination through architecture, through agreed interfaces and APIs, goes a long way to reducing the coordination costs between those teams. The second is the transition between inter-organizational or inter-team coordination to intra-team coordination. And here what I mean is, if you have multiple teams that need to coordinate through process and through meetings, typically, what we end up with is a situation where the cost of coordination will be 1 or 2 orders of magnitude higher than any coordination that can happen within a team. So what we are looking for is structuring teams in such a way that most of the coordination that is required happens within the team, and as little as possible of the coordination should happen between teams. And the implication of this is that this requires you to build cross-functional or interdisciplinary teams where basically a team by itself can take an entire requirement or hypothesis or anything that needs to work that needs to be done and has all the skills within the team to basically execute with minimal interaction with the rest of the company. And I think that that is a challenge for many organizations, that you may need product management, user experience, architecture, development, testing, deployment, and customer support all in one team in order to minimize the coordination cost of making this happen. There are many reasons why people stay away from cross-functional teams. One of the typical arguments is competence development. If I work with all kinds of people that have nothing in common with my role, how do I evaluate that? Or how do I do performance assessment, et cetera, et cetera? There are all kinds of good solutions to that to go beyond the purpose of this video. But I would really like to stress that the cause, when we think about organization and reorganization, the first is the organization should be in service of the B, business and business strategy, the A, architecture and technology choices, and the P, process, ways of work and tooling, and not the other way around. And the second is we should focus on minimizing coordination cost predominantly through architecture and interfaces, and then by shifting inter-team coordination to intra-team coordination.